I am Amelia. I am a technical cartographer at Onyx, like you just heard, and I spent many years making print maps, which you also just heard. So I'm going to talk a little bit about bringing print techniques, specifically a blend mode we developed for map tiles, into our workflow. So like you heard earlier, Onyx makes apps for outdoor adventurers. Fish is the newest of those. It's geared towards lake anglers in the Midwest because, yeah, I'll get into more of that later. So one thing we identified early on for this map that we really wanted to focus on was really visually impressive bathymetry. That was something that anglers told us they really valued, and it's Minnesota, which is where we are building out kind of the first version of this map, has really widely available bathymetry data, and so something we knew that we could do. On the first iteration of this project, I was working with an engineer who built 2 different tile sets from bathymetry data, one that was a depth hillshade and one that was a depth gradient. And I was trying to add them both to the style sheet for the rest of the map and could not get it to look the way I wanted. And so sent this Slack message to my boss complaining about how I wished I had a multiply blend mode. So we heard a lot about blend modes earlier. Multiply is exactly what it sounds like. Take the pixel value of one and the other, multiply them together. And it's frequently used in print. This is part of a map of Glacier National Park that I worked on. And so this is that same area of Glacier. You can see we have our hillshade, we have our land cover. When you put them together with just a normal transparency, the land cover kind of just sits on top. When you multiply them, we can still see the shadows, and it just looks like a more cohesive image. So that's kind of what I was trying to get for this bathymetry and couldn't get it with transparency alone. Here's that same image of Glacier, and for this particular map, we also multiplied some of the vector layers, like the contours and the creeks, to get them lower in the visual hierarchy. And so back to bathymetry, had these 2 different layers, and we didn't have bathymetry data for every single lake, so whatever styling I ended up with for the lakes that had bathymetry, it needed to go with the rest of the map too, and it was just could not get that to work. Here's a quick screenshot of the raster paint properties in Mapbox style sheets. You probably can't read it, but there's settings for saturation and contrast, but transparency is the only thing that is for how a layer interacts with other layers. This was definitely not the first time I had complained about wishing I had blend modes. But for this particular project, we realized that since we had these 2 tile sets that were made from the same data, we could use this Python package that takes 2 image layers and blends them together using whichever blend mode you want, you can pick. So I worked with the same engineer to reconfigure our tile pipeline, and this is a schematic of the pipeline he built. So we take our raw GeoTIFF raster data. From that, we create 2 different tile sets, one that's the depth gradient, and one that's the hillshade. And then we multiply those together, and we have our final tiles that we add to the style sheet. And there's a config in there where I could set the colors and the breakpoints for the colors so that I could get the output tiles to match the rest of the map. And that was much easier to work with. I could fit it in with the lake colors and the bathymetry contours and get the colors to look much better. So this is a quick side-by-side view of the original with the 2 different tile sets and the final with the multiplied single tile set. You can see the colors are just way more vibrant, the shadows are clearer, and it just matches the other lakes that don't have bathymetry data much better. And since we first started working on this, we have made a few tweaks to the settings in the style sheet, but overall it's been pretty well received, and it's really fun to pan around and just get a really at a glance sense of what the bottom of the lake looks like. And course, always thinking about other ways we might be able to use this. The imagery for lakes is notoriously finicky because, like, depending on what time of day or what time of year the imagery was shot, you can get a lot of glare, and so it can be even hard to make like bathymetry contours show up. This would be a much more complicated pipeline to build, but this is a quick mock-up I did in Photoshop, and you can see that like blending the bathymetry with the imagery really pulls out a lot of the detail in a lake. So definitely something that I think would be fun to play around with in the future. And so, yeah, like I said, I worked in print for a long time. It's a really steep learning curve to learn this side of things. So this was a really satisfying project to be able to bring things over to this side of things. And that's what I have for today.